Can you imagine paying to pretend you have a job? Paying every day so you can go to a fake office and pretend you're actually working while you're unemployed. For many in China, this is now a reality. The country is facing a deepening crisis that has seen many of its youngest workers forced to accept grueling working conditions, low-paying job offers, or to be shut out of the labor market entirely. Global instability, internal crises in sectors like real estate, and, in general, weaker economic growth are starting to put the Asian country on the ropes. According to the World Bank data, China's economic growth peaked in 2007 when it grew at a whopping 14.1%. Since then, the economic development has slowed down while the country has experienced the global instability caused by crises like the financial crash of 2008 or the COVID-19 pandemic. Inside the country, the population has started to feel the consequences. Now, regular Chinese people struggle to find a job, and among them, there's one group that's being hit especially hard by the economic downturn: the Chinese youth. But why? Despite its central planning and all-powerful Chinese Communist Party, Beijing has struggled to fully reactivate its economy after COVID-19. The country's strong dependence on exports and the need to remain competitive in the global stage have left little room for the government to correct the course of the economy. As it usually happens in times of weak growth, economic trouble is harming younger cohorts more severely. Despite the past 5 years, youth unemployment in China has become one of the country's most pressing economic challenges. In 2021, the jobless rate among 16 to 24-year-olds was around 12.4%, before surging to a record 21.3% by mid-2023. Since then, the rate has stabilized but remains exceptionally high. The persistence of this issue points to bleak prospects for China's younger generation. Their parents saw the country lift 800 million people from poverty and the development of a middle class of over 400 million. And yet, after attending university for several years, once they hit the job market, many find it barren. You might find a job, but it may not offer the conditions you thought it would. Part of the problem has its roots in a profound mismatch between the real needs of the Chinese economy and young people's expectations. The quick expansion of the higher education system has allowed millions to attend university, yet the market has not kept pace. As much as 40% of graduates in China work jobs for which they're overqualified or have no job at all. The demand for labor in the country is still concentrated in sectors that have no use for college graduates. In 2023, a whopping 22% of the country still worked in agriculture. Manufacturing, another contributing sector to China's economic well-being, accounts for around 16% of the total unemployment. And even though higher value sectors are growing, they still aren't generating enough demand to absorb all the people graduating. For example, workers in IT made up a meager 2% of the total jobs in the economy in 2023. And recent events like the Chinese Communist Party's crackdown on tech have not made things any better. Between 2022 and 2023, hiring in this sector decreased by over 11%. Other sectors like internet, gaming, or e-commerce saw even bigger falls in job creation. Meanwhile, the country still has demand for workers, just not in the sectors most suited for highly educated job holders. So, while young graduates are met with scarcity, China still can't get enough welders, joiners, or elderly caregivers. While some young people in China are able to enter the workforce through familial connections, not everyone is that lucky. Personal connections are crucial for climbing the ladder in the country. So much so that in the business community, workers often attend social gatherings to gain favor with their employers. But it's not just younger people who face a grim reality. On the other end of the age spectrum, senior Chinese workers face a crisis of their own. That's because if finding a job in China for young people is getting harder by the day, for the older workers, the job market is even crueler. Senior is a bit of an overstatement, however. Many companies continue to warn those over 35 against applying. The rule known as the Curse of 35 was inspired by a policy that wanted to reinvigorate the country's sprawling bureaucracy. From a hiring perspective, companies believe they're more costly than a younger hire and not as willing to work overtime. This idea has a wide-ranging impact on the Chinese economy as it wastes the potential of a big part of its labor still in their prime age for work. All of this is to say ageism is widespread in China. Chinese employees get crushed by a brutal labor market first when they join the workforce, and once again when employers deem them too old to work. So, what about those who are in the Goldilocks zone? Well, they aren't necessarily better off. Sure, having a job is easier, but that doesn't mean it's a good one. In an environment where job scarcity has given employers the upper hand, many are taking advantage of the situation. Across social media, many users have started to denounce grueling hiring processes. In some of them, candidates are forced to perform sets of push-ups to prove they're fit enough to perform their duties. And the humiliations don't end after being hired. In many cases, Chinese employees are forced to perform duties that are outside of their job descriptions, like waiters being forced to dance to amuse customers. Many young Chinese disillusioned with the job market are turning away from the private sector. Instead, they look to secure a position working for the government. Traditionally, getting a job in the civil service has been seen as getting an iron rice bowl, or, in other words, a type of employment that guarantees you'll be fed for many years to come. It's a defined path, has decent wages, and is a way to avoid the brutal job market in the private sector. A good option for less ambitious people who didn't mind signing up for a life of bureaucracy in exchange for stability. But this route has become a fleeting opportunity over the last several years. For starters, the entry exams for the civil service in the country are especially difficult. In 2024, a record 3.4 million people passed the initial screening that granted them the right to sit the actual civil service exams. In the end, only 1.5% of those will secure a position. At the same time, in recent years, civil service employment in China has seen its conditions worsen. In 2024, some civil servants saw their pay cut by as much as 30%. Bonuses have also seen a reduction, and some regions are seeing layoffs. Some public workers have been unpaid for months on end, while others have to survive with as little as 4,000 yuan per month, roughly $500. So, the iron rice bowl is also starting to rust. In China, lacking a job is seen as a lack of character. That's why many, while looking for a job, try to avoid questions about their employment status. In such an environment, fake companies are springing up around the country. Organizations that for $5 or $6 allow unemployed Chinese to take up a desk in their office and build a routine around a pretend job. In some cases, the farce goes as far as assigning job seekers fake tasks to make them seem busy, all to avoid the shame that's tied to joblessness. China's unemployment problem is far from being a short-term glitch. It's the result of deeper structural problems in the largest economy in Asia. For China's youth, the disconnect between the market's needs and their expectations is leaving many stuck in limbo, overqualified, underemployed, and disillusioned. For middle-aged workers, they're discriminated against by employers. Xi Jinping, president of China and leader of the Communist Party, promised in 2021 that his country's population would enjoy common prosperity. So far, for many of the young people in China, the promises of Xi have failed to materialize, leaving them disappointed with the lack of opportunity and reluctant to accept lower-paying jobs. For them, the communist leader had a message: learn to eat the bitterness, or in other words, to suck it up.